Welcome to this explainer. Look, if you're a student or a young adult, you already know the struggle. Modern life literally feels like a constant, exhausting battle for focus. You finally sit down to study, and bam, suddenly your mind is a million miles away from your textbook. It completely destroys your productivity and, frankly, your ability to actually learn.
So why does it feel so impossibly hard to just sit down and focus? It's a question we all ask ourselves. But here's the really good news. Your brain isn't broken. You aren't uniquely lazy, and you definitely aren't incapable. It's actually much simpler than that. Your daily habits are likely just completely misaligned with how your brain's cognitive capacity actually works. We're out here draining our mental batteries in ways we don't even realize.
Let's look at how this builds up, starting right from the moment we wake up. We often completely sabotage our focus before the day even really gets going. Honestly, the very first things we do in the morning can set our brains up for failure before we've even glanced at a syllabus. And that brings us to habit number 1, irregular sleep. Science actually shows us that when you're sleep deprived, your prefrontal cortex, which is basically your brain's logical control center, loses its ability to suppress negative memories. It can't regulate your amygdala, your emotions center. Without enough rest, your brain simply cannot shut down intrusive thoughts. This is exactly why you might sit in an early morning lecture feeling totally overwhelmed by stress, unable to memorize a single concept the professor is throwing at you.
So what's the fix? Well, it isn't just slamming more coffee. It's about establishing a strict, consistent sleep routine. Research highlights that rapid eye movement, or REM sleep, is specifically required to restore the mechanisms in your brain that keep unwanted memories from crashing into your conscious thoughts. Think of it like a reset button. Protect your sleep schedule, and you absolutely protect your focus.
Okay, but what happens when we actually do wake up? We stumble right into habit number 2. You absolutely know the feeling. Just one more quick scroll before I get out of bed. It seems harmless, right? But the brain drain hypothesis tells us a different story. Just the mere presence of your phone and actively checking it the literal second you wake up immediately drains your available cognitive capacity. You're basically spending your most valuable morning mental energy on digital noise before you've even opened a book. The practical fix here is super simple but incredibly powerful: physical distance. Keep your phone completely out of reach from your bed. Make yourself actually get up to turn off that alarm. Protecting that fresh morning mental energy pays off massively when it's finally time to sit down and learn.
Right, so you've navigated the morning traps, and it's time to study. But what happens to our brains when we finally sit down to work? Well, this is where our environment gets highly demanding, and two massive focus killers just take over the driver's seat.
Welcome to habit number 3, constant task switching. We really think we're being productive by writing an essay, checking a group chat, and watching a video all at the exact same time. But the research is crystal clear on this. Media multitasking drastically reduces your sustained attention, and it actually increases your baseline distractibility. Let's be real, you aren't doing 3 things at once. You're just doing 3 things poorly. You're exhausting your brain and pretty much guaranteeing you won't remember a word of the essay you just wrote.
To combat this, you've got to practice intentional technology use. Before you start working, know your exact goal. Close out all those extra browser tabs. Focus intensely on one single task until you reach a specific milestone, and then just log off.
And that leads right into habit number 4, responding to every single notification. Get this, here is a wild fact from a recent electrophysiological study. Just hearing a smartphone ping immediately disrupts your cognitive control. The auditory interruption alone causes significant delays in your reaction times. It is quite literally hijacking your brain's attentional resources. So, what's the solution to this auditory hijacking? Mute your environment. Turn off all those non-essential notifications and religiously use Do Not Disturb mode during focused work. You have to physically prevent these distractors from breaking your cognitive flow. Now, even if we totally eliminate those digital distractions, we still face a huge internal battle. Why do we suddenly put off studying the second the material gets difficult or overwhelming? Well, this shifts us into the emotional roadblocks of studying. And that brings us to habit number 5, procrastination. But I want to redefine this for you based on what the research actually says. Procrastination is not laziness. Let me repeat that. It's not laziness. It's actually a low-resource, avoidant coping strategy. See, when a task makes you feel stressed, anxious, or bored, your brain looks for a really quick escape from those uncomfortable emotions. You put off the task simply to feel better in the short term. So, how do we actually beat it? First, Just acknowledge the emotional discomfort without judging yourself. Then, lower the task's stress level by breaking it down into tiny, ridiculously manageable steps. Look, if writing a 10-page paper causes major anxiety, just commit to writing one single paragraph. This stops your brain from feeling that overwhelming, panic-induced need to escape.
But let's be honest with ourselves for a second. Where do we usually go when we avoid our work? We definitely don't just sit there in silence. No, we usually transition into the next major pitfall of the student experience.
We fall right into habit number 7, comparing yourself with others. Avoidance almost always leads to passive social media scrolling. You sit there thinking, wow, everyone else seems to be doing way better, traveling more, and studying way less than me. This passive digital consumption triggers what psychologists call upward social comparisons. And those comparisons rapidly generate negative feelings, spike your stress levels, and totally erode your mental resilience. To break this comparison trap, you must consciously limit your passive social media consumption. When you catch yourself mindlessly scrolling and feeling totally inadequate, just put the phone down. Actively redirect that mental energy towards your own personal progress and your own unique goals. Now, let's look at the end of the day. What happens when the stress of procrastination and that heavy feeling of inadequacy from social comparison follow us right into the night? Well, unresolved stress transforms into our next major focus killer. This is habit number 6, replaying negative thoughts, also known in the literature as brooding rumination. It's a self-reinforcing cycle of repetitive negative thinking. You lie there in bed replaying what went wrong, which obviously makes you feel worse, which just makes you think even more negative thoughts. It's an exhausting emotional loop that completely drains the cognitive energy you desperately need for the next day.
The scientifically backed solution to this kind of rumination is mindfulness. Studies actually show that even just a quick 10-minute mindfulness meditation session significantly improves your attentional control and helps break that rumination spiral. It shifts your brain out of passive brooding and back into the present moment, where you can actually do some concrete problem solving.
Okay, so we've covered sleep, phones, multitasking, notifications, procrastination, comparison, and rumination. That's a lot, but how do we permanently fix our focus without just, crossing our fingers and hoping we wake up in a better mood tomorrow? This brings us to our final hurdle, habit number 8, depending only on motivation. Let me tell you, waiting for a fleeting burst of motivation to study is a massive trap. Motivation is an emotion, and like all emotions, it fluctuates constantly. If you rely on it, your productivity is always going to be unstable. Building reliable daily systems is what actually gets the work done. The absolutely key takeaway here is to create consistent, small habits. Set a specific time and place to study every single day, regardless of how you feel in the moment. The secret is that action actually generates motivation, not the other way around. Don't sit around waiting for inspiration to magically strike. Build the system, take the action, and let the motivation follow you. So ask yourself, which of these 8 habits is secretly sabotaging your potential? And what small change are you going to make tomorrow morning? Your focus is shaped by what you repeatedly do. Change one habit for 7 days and observe the difference. StudyNova. Simple learning,